Yeah, Leo is trying to join, but he couldn't. So um, I just gave him the link. Sorry, good.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you so much for joining. Well, today we'll be talking about mastering federated search in Splunk. So let's get started. The agenda for today is first, what is federated search, then how it works, how you can implement this feature in your Splunk environment, and also a federated search demo. So we'll learn there how to implement and how it works in a real situation. Okay, what is federated search? Basically, federated search is the capability to run searches across multiple Splunk environments. So there are some limitations, but we'll see that in the next slides. Now, what this includes. So you're able to run ad hoc and schedule searches uh, from one instance to other one. Then you can also initiate searches from one Splunk environment to multiple Splunk environments. That's something that this feature offers to you. Then you can also manage security requirements across environments with role-based data access control, as you would do with your environment. And you can also configure and set up with a self-service user interface. So this is really nice, as you don't need help from anyone else, basically. If you have the proper knowledge, you can implement it in your environment. So something good about this federated search is that it can be implemented on any Splunk environment. With this, I mean Splunk Enterprise and also a Splunk Cloud. And it is compatible between them both. In fact, most of the situations for this federated search could be from Splunk Cloud to on-prem environment, or from on-prem to a Splunk Cloud. Or even if you have an on-premise environment and you want that environment connected to another on-premise environment, that's something you can do. There are some pre-requirements for this, which is specifically like the Splunk version. And this Splunk version must be higher than version 8.2, at least in the Splunk Enterprise. With a Splunk Cloud, it is not something to worry about it because Splunk Cloud keeps updated. However, for informational purposes, this feature starts to be available in the Splunk Cloud from version 8.2.21. So, however, if you have a Splunk environment in Splunk Cloud, currently that is completely compatible with this feature is completely compatible with that, because in a Splunk Cloud runs the latest version of Splunk. Now, how this works? We could say that this works kind of similar to the distributed search. So in this case, the main searcher is connected basically to the other Splunk platform, and from there the query is processed. So it's processed the first part, the searching part, from the search where you executed the federated search basically, and then it runs in the target in the target indexers in the other side. Now here is an image about how this works. This is the theory about how it works. So we have the federated search, which is basically the instance you're going to configure to reach the target indexer basically. So we configure, once you get that configured, basically it connects to the other one. So if you have some knowledge in Splunk, this is pretty similar to a distributed search, just with some additional steps. Now, for
So,
this,
Kriti,
excuse
I have a question here. So, no need to be same cluster, right? Here, the from the remote search head and the federated search head, the indexes can be a different cluster, right?
right, yeah, it can
Okay.
be in a complete different environment. They don't need to be connected under difficult protocols, nothing like that. It is a communication via internet, basically. and it can connect any other instance around the world. Yeah. Now, this federated search has a couple of modes that you can use it. Those modes are the standard and the transparent modes. Now, you can say maybe when I have to use one, when I have to use the other one. Well, basically, for the standard, it is basically if you want to restrict the data a little bit more, and maybe if you want to only provide access to a specific data sets, indexes, safe searches, something more specific, something more restrictive, then the standard mode is what you want to select. Then also we have the transparent mode, which is like it gives you like more access. It is more like the hybrid search. If you know a little bit more about, if you know about this feature, well, transparent works like kind of similar to this. And we also with transparent mode, in fact, this is the mode you want to select. For example, if you want to use like enterprise security using this or ITSI, that's the mode you want to select, as it gives you more capabilities to run searches. So you don't require a special syntax, which is something required for the standard mode. So the standard mode, in fact, requires like a little bit more learning, as you require some specific syntax to run the queries. For the transparent mode, it doesn't happen. So it gives you like the complete control of when you want to run a query. Um, let's go now to the next slide. Okay, some additional information about this is that, as I said before, the federated search support enterprise security and ITSI. However, only transparent mode is supported. And for this, I want to say that for enterprise security, there are some limitations which are specified in the documentation of enterprise security. So if you wish to implement these features using enterprise security, I will recommend you to reach the official documentation of enterprise security so you can know a little bit more about what are the limits of the federated search using enterprise security. For ITSI, then it is not like specifically limited. However, remember that only transparent mode is enabled. Now, something else about federated search is that metrics are not supported, only events. So that's something to take in mind when you want to implement this. Then, as I said before also, there are some SPL limitations depending on the selected mode. For example, the standard mode is like kind of limited. So in fact, some of the queries could require a special syntax. And if that syntax is not provided, the search is not going to work. So, and also something good about this feature is that you can even run accelerated and unaccelerated data models. So that's something that federated search allows. Now, how you can configure this in your Splunk environment? This has some pre-requirements. Basically, the role that your user owns must have a couple of capabilities, which is the admin all objects and indexes edit. Those are a must if you want to enable this. So make sure that your user and your role has those capabilities there. And also, if you want to implement this in a Splunk cloud, you have to make sure to do an IP whitelist for the deployment that is configured. This is a must. If you don't do it, then you won't be able to connect. It won't be able to connect. So this is something that you can do through ACS or from the Splunk UI, which is, I think, the easiest method, as you just have to go to general settings, and there you can set up IP whitelisting. Further information about this, I recommend you to check the documentation about the Splunk Cloud. and how to whitelist IPs there. And then the last pre-requirement before enabling this is that you have to create a service account user on each remote deployment that you want to set up as federated search. So there is also a pre-requirement here, which is specifically about a role that you have to set up, how to set up a role for the federated provider. And I will be showing show you that in the next slides. Now, this is like the first window that you will see when you start configuring the federated search in Splunk. As you can see, it is very simple. In the beginning of at the top of the window, you will see that which is the mode that you want to select. As we discussed before, there is the standard and the transparent mode. So from there, you can select which is the mode. Then we have as provider name. This is a name of your preference. It is not going to affect the connection. It is just like the name you want to set for this connection. And then we have the remote host. This is the important one. So here we have to specify the IP address or the DNS name that you are using to connect your Splunk environment. And something important about this is you have to add the Splunk internal communication port, which is the 8089. You must be you have to remember that this port must also, if you have firewall rules in your company, you must be you have to make sure that this port is whitelisted or is open. So you can run simple tests like telnet or the NC command from your machine if you're using MacBook. There are some other options if you're using Windows, but you have to confirm that you have connectivity through that port. Now, then we have the service account username and the service account password. This is basically the user that has the capability to run federated searches. So I will be showing that in the next slides in our demo session.
Hey, Cridley,
Yeah.
quick question. So if you have when you said you must have a role with the admin all objects and indexes edit capabilities to create a federated provider, right? I think there is another capability that you have to add where you have to select the FSH manage capability so that you'll be able to do the federated search.
Yeah. In fact, that's the one we require for the service account user. That's perfectly fine. Yeah. But for this pre-requirement here is regarding what the role requires to enable federated search as it is. That other role is required, but for running the searches as a service account. So we'll review that. But thanks for the reminder.
And these two roles for even standard or transparent, we need these roles, right?
Yeah.
These capabilities. Yeah.
Yeah, to get this enabled, to enable the federated search, those are basically the roles required to enable this feature. Now, to run the feature, there is an additional capability that I will be showing you in the next slides. Basically, as you could see, that's all the things you need. Then you also can set an application context is where you want to run those queries, for example. So you can select there in a specific app, like for example the search app, which is the default. But if you have another app, you can also select it. And that's basically all the things regarding the basic configuration. You also have there the last, which is a warning and consent. This is just to agree. And you can also, something I strongly recommend is to test the connection before clicking on save. In that way, you can notice that the connection is working. If you press, for example, the test connection and everything is good, you will see a green icon here in the top, which is going to say that the connection is working fine. Now, the second phase of this configuration is basically creating a federated index. Here, you are going to select which is the index that you want to search in the remote in the remote instance. Basically, you have the federated index name. This is the name you're going to use to search in Splunk. This can be the same index name as you want, or it can be the name of your preference. Then you have to select the federated provider, which is the one you created before. And then you have to configure the remote dataset. By default, you are going to see that dataset type is index, and in dataset name for this specific case is going to be the index name. So let's say you have an AWS index and you want to search there, then you have to type in the dataset name the AWS index. Now, let's go with the demo.
So here, I have a question
Yeah, of
here.
course.
For example, like we have some data in the remote search head, which is AWS index, and in the federated search, you created index name called. You created the same index name with AWS, but
Mhm.
how it knows that okay, it needs to search the data that related to this particular index.
Mhm. Okay, yeah, the reason how Splunk can the way that Splunk differentiates for example, the original index from the target index and the federated search index is that you have to specify, you have to change a little bit the query. For example, when you're specifying a federated index, and when you're typing the query, you have to type something like index equal federated column and then the name of the remote data set. I'm sorry, the name of the federated index name. So the query changes a little bit. I will show you in the demo how it looks like.
Okay. Ram raised a hand, so
Yeah,
Ram,
let
could you?
me stop
Uh,
sharing.
hey Kridley, hey Venkat, can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
So, the federated provider, right? So, do we need to give the IP or host name or FQDN of the cluster master of the cluster, or can we also give an direct a single indexer? Like, how does that work?
Mhm. Okay, let me show you. Here,
Or
in
we
this
can,
case, you're going to specify specifically the target is going to be the target, the indexer in the other side. So let's go here, for example, from here. As you can
okay,
see in this image, which is like the structure of this, when you're setting up, for example, in your Splunk local platform, you're going from this, you're going to configure the information of the target of the remote search it. So what it's going to do this, how can I say it? This is kind of similar how searched clustering works.
okay,
uh, as you know, maybe searched clustering, when for example a searched cannot execute a query, it delegates the query to another searched, and then the searched runs the query, and that's the way how it works. For example, with scheduled searches, we could say like it is kind of similar this process. So in this case, the federated searched is going to run this query, is going to send this query to the remote searched. The remote searched is going to process the query and ask to the indexers. Once the
oh,
result are done, those results are coming back to the remote searched, and from here, from the remote searched, are going to going back to the federated searched. So that's the
uh,
way. That's how it works.
okay. I think I got it. Thank you. So basically, we need to give the searched cluster in the federated provider of
Yep.
whatever the clusters we want to search.
Yep.
Yep.
In this case,
Thank
the
you.
searched specifically.
Yep.
Okay, let me share my entire screen. I will share here. So please let me know if you're able to see my screen now.
Uh, Even Offer has some questions, so yeah, you can ask Offer.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious that last one. So when you're doing the federated search, if you're searching the single instance or a search head cluster, so do
Mhm.
you tell it to go back to the cluster manager, is what you said, so it knows of the indexers? Or
It,
you're
it
telling it to go back to the search head cluster, like
yeah,
manager.
search it directly. So, for example, if you have a search it cluster, probably you will have an index. You will have a load balancer in front of that. So in
Mhm.
this case, what you have to set up there is like the same IP, the same URL, for example, you uses to access in your Splunk in your UI. I'm sorry, in your web browser, you can use the same. Or if you have an IP address, you can also use the same. Just remember that the communication is through the port 8089. So the communication basically for this protocol is from search it to search it. So if you want to, for example, configure, let's go here, for example, to show you a little bit, federated search. From here, for example, in this case, in fact, let me start explaining this with the demo. This is like, for example, a test configuration that I did for this training purposes. In this case, I'm connecting here an Splunk Cloud environment. So I have my Splunk Cloud here environment, and I have this here. So basically, this Splunk Cloud environment has 3 searches. So this is a searched cluster and has 3 searches. And as you can see here, the remote address, the remote host I'm selecting here is basically the URL. The URL I got from the DNS name that I got from the load balancer after the load balancer. So this is connected to the 3 searches. And so the search that is available is the one that is going to help with the communication of the federated search. If you have, for example, let's say a single instance, so you just have also to type there the single instance host name or IP address if you also have it. So it's very simple currently. It is just like the same URL you're going to use. In this case, for example, this URL looks like kind of weird because I was accessing a specific index here. But for example, this is a normal URL from Splunk Cloud. From this one, basically, and adding the port, that's all you need basically as a remote host to make the connection. Is that clear?
Yeah, makes sense. I was just curious. So you're not going to get really the advantage of like any parallelization then for search head clustering. It's just going to run on that one search head, or will it still do remote? Say if it's a search head clustering, will it still be deployed to the manager, or it's just going to run on that one? Right?
Yep.
Yeah, just run there locally, huh? So if
Yep.
you're doing a bunch of searches through there, is it going to peg just one search head, or is it's going to round robin each search then? You're essentially saying if it's going back to that, it's just going to go to a different search head each time. Like it keeps making these queries.
Yeah, in this case, it works, as I told you before, as a distributed search specifically. That's how even the documentation explains this. So basically, for example, this is my local instance. So you can see right here, this is my local instance. If I run a query from here, let's say I want to search in the AWS index again. So that is going to send that request to the searches here in the Splunk Cloud. So it is going to run that search, I'm sorry, in the background from here. And the normal process as Splunk runs a search. And once the search is done, instead of returning that in front of in these instances, it's going to send those results to this local machine, and I will get those results from here. So this is working like we could say like a tunnel. So, but yeah, the communication basically is from search it to search it, and these searches are going to run those queries from their environment depending on the configuration you have.
Hey Quigley, so I get it. So if there is searcher cluster A and you have so basically it's from searcher to searcher, right?
Yeah.
So my question is, so if you are using federated searcher to run a job on searcher cluster A, and searcher cluster A is doing all the job, so you are saying this the resource is going to be used on the searcher cluster A, right? So indirectly we are giving more jobs to some remote cluster, right? We should be
Yeah,
aware of that also.
it is part, we could say it is partial, because, for
Okay.
example, the job that is required to be done by the searched, let's say there are some commands that run at search level, those are going to be executed from here. It is going to send like the package ready in the other side to
Okay.
be processed. And then the other searches, so we could say that the load of the query is going to be reduced in the target federated search environment. So yeah, it is split. The other search, for example, if I run the search from here, and this search sends that query to the cluster here in the Splunk cloud. So there, the search part is going to be ready from here, and this search basically is going to act just as a tunnel. So it's going
Yeah.
to route that the request, the query request to the indexers. The indexers are going to send the reply, and the reply from this is going to be sent again to the machine that requested the query.
Got you. Got you. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Now let me show you how this works. And let me access from here specifically. So, for example, as I said before, this is my local machine, and this is a Splunk Cloud. So the pre-requirements, as I told you before, if you have an admin user, there is no problems. Those capabilities are already there. And if you also have an Splunk Cloud, the SC admin user, that's the same. Those capabilities are already there. So in this case, as Splunk Cloud is going to be my target, I will be connecting my local machine to a Splunk Cloud to run a federated search here in Splunk Cloud. The pre-requirements must be here, basically. So let me show you a little bit how my roles are working. Let me check what happened. Okay. At least. Okay. Okay, yeah, from here. Here are the roles. I created a new role called FD. So let me show you which are the capabilities of this role. Selected. So basically the capabilities that the role must have to act as a service, as this. Let me show you this real quick. Federated search, edit. So as a service account, in order to work as a service account, the capabilities you need is this FSH underscore manage. This is the capability that Pratish mentioned before. And also, of course, you need the capability to run queries. So this is like the required things, the basic required capabilities. Now, depending on what you want to achieve, which type of queries you want to run, you can select the different capabilities you want. But in this case, the basic capabilities you need are those. If those capabilities are missing, your role doesn't have it, so the federated query will fail, basically. So that's what you need. And then you also need to assign this role, of course, to an user. You can create a new user or assign this to an existing user. But that's it, basically. Adding that capability is what is going to allow to run federated searches. Remember that this configuration must be done in the target instance. Why in the target instance? Because this is the one that is going to provide the permissions to run those federated searches. Now, in the federated search, which is this one, this is the one that is going to create those queries. The only thing you have to implement here is the configuration, just to let this instance know where these have to connect for federated searches. So as I told you before, you can access from here, just going to settings and then going to the distributed environment, going to federated search. If you access there, you will see this window here in which you have the Add Federated Provider from here, and also the federated indexes from here. So if you click, for example, here on Add Federated Provider, you will have all the information here to set. But something important before I forget this, let me show you this. Previously, I mentioned that for Splunk Cloud, it's a pre-requirement that you have to whitelist your environment. So that can be done really easy from server settings if you have a Splunk Cloud environment. So settings, IP allow list, and from here, basically, the option you need to open, let's wait for this, is from this one, search head API. In this case, for these session purposes, I just open this connection for every connection basically. But of course, this is unsecure and this is not recommended. In your real environment, the recommendation is to check which is your public IP, and according to that information, so you can set up that from here. So, but this is basically the only thing you have to whitelist is to add is added here in the search head API access, and just add your IP address, your public IP address there. That's the main pre-requirement for Splunk Cloud. Once you get that done, basically, your environment should be ready. If the connection still fails or something is not working as expected, even if you have this whitelisted and you are completely sure that in your environment there are not issues with the network, my recommendation will be to raise a support ticket and check what is going on there. It could be there is the possibility that could be something misconfigured in the background, so it could require assistance. But most of the cases, this is something that you can do by your own. Now, let's see. Okay, let me show you now from here the configuration. As I said before, here the provider name is going to be the name, any name you want. So let's type here training, something like training 1. This is going to the name that I'm going to set for this. The remote host, as I said before, we're going to use this Splunk Cloud. So let me copy this and just paste it. This is the host name. Removing this, just leaving as that. And remember to add the port at the end, 8089. Then the service account name could be the account name. Remember, this is the account we created in the other side with the specific roles. So, but in this case, for these training purposes, I will be using my account, the main account, which is currently C, and my password. So, and I will be selecting for this purpose the transparent mode. And from here, you just have to click and agree. You will see that this is going to, now you will see this green save button. But as I said before, what I normally recommend is first to click here and test connection. If you click on that, you will see at the top, connection successful. So if that's there, that means that everything should be fine now to go. So let me click on save, and you will see that now your federated provided name is going to be listed here. In this case, training 1. Now, the second phase of this configuration is going to be the federated indexes. From here, you will also need to add the configuration. This is to reach a specific index in the remote environment. So this federated index name is a name of your preference. This doesn't need to be a specific name. So let's say we are going to name this Coco. So this is going to be our name. Let's see. Let me do that. It's not loading there for. Let me go here again. Oops, it does not appear in the other one. That's weird. But well, let me show you with this. You don't lose too much time on this. This is the configuration I did previously for the other one. So the name I selected for this was FD_test. As you can see right here, the federated provider. So I selected the FD test. Let me show you that real quick. So you can see that that's not different from the one we created before. So I selected also the transparent mode here. And we have, let me, this is, I opened the wrong one. FD test. As you can see, it has the same configuration, the same username, the application context. I leave that as default. So basically, it is the same. For this, I don't know what's happening with my local instance, but let's do this. Okay, from here, you are normally able to select here the federated provider. So in this case, the FD test. And now the important configuration from here is going to be the remote data set configuration. So by default, you will have the index, safe searches, data model, last job, different data set types. But for these training purposes, we are going to use an index. In this case, this data set name for these training purposes are going to be the internal index. So as you can see, the only field that I have to type the real index name is this one, the data set name. The index name is not required to be here in the federated index name. So this is the name of your preference, basically. So let me close this, and now let me show you how this works. So as you can see, this is the name, basically, of this federated index name. You just need basically to copy this. You go to your search and reporting app. From here, we're going to type index equal this exact same name and just run the query as normal. Okay. No. Yeah, that's an error caused because of the other two created there. But as you can see now, the important thing here is that we now have access to the logs from Splunk Cloud. In this case, you remember, we had configured the underscore internal index, which are basically the internal configurations, internal logs of Splunk. Now, how do we know that this is from Splunk Cloud? Well, from here, the host. As you can see, the hosts are the Splunk Cloud indexers. We have IDX, the IDX1, and the X2, and the X3, all of them from Splunk Cloud. So just let me show you just the difference. If I run from here, the normal query is going to be, let me show you. Oh,
No, don't run last 24 hours. Maybe do last.
yeah.
Last.
I don't know why this is confusing that. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it confused the logs. But let me show you from here. Those are the logs we have here from Splunk Cloud. So let me run the same query. Yeah, something I forgot. The thing is that those results looks like it's going to be appearing there from there. When you, this is something, this happened. Now, remember why this happened. This happened specifically because of the transparent mode. So when I run this query from here because of the transparent mode, as the same word is saying, basically, when I run the first query, which was this one, federated that, the FD_test, it made this data available for this specific index. Now, if I want this specific information, you can specify that with federated. But if you only type with the underscore internal, then you will also have that because of the transparent mode. However, the information listed here for the other machine is going to be to the moment when you run the federated search query. So
Hey,
that's
Kirti,
the reason
so
why. Yeah.
Quick question. So do you have two federated providers here? Did you create two
Oh yeah,
providers?
that's because of this. I created the new one, so I'm sorry. Let me delete those which
Yeah,
are
delete the
training one
one with the
and this one. So
yeah.
that,
So this one has only the standard, right?
yep.
Okay. Yeah, if you have a transparent mode, then you don't need to type in the federated colon index. You just type in the index name and it will pull the logs from the
Yeah,
remote search. So I
yeah,
think that's what it's doing when you did index equal to underscore internal, because you have one federated provider created with a standard mode and the other with the transparent mode. So that's why it was confusing. But now if you type index equal to underscore internal, it should show you just the logs from this one.
yeah. Shall run this again? Yeah,
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 see?
you're right.
There you go.
and, and as I told you before, if we run again Federated the
Yeah,
FT test, now we have specifically the logs from Splunk Cloud.
yep. There you go.
So something important about this is as depending on what you want to achieve, this could have too many permissions maybe, or depending on what you want to achieve. Maybe it could be, maybe I don't know, maybe a security breach for someone. So that's the reason why people always try to analyze what they want to achieve specifically, and they want maybe to select the standard mode, which is, as I said before, it is more restrictive and could require like more specific syntax. So it requires like more it requires more things to add when running a query. So, but for this, I am not explaining that in detail because there are a lot of documentation about this. But for example, in the official documentation about the Splunk, which is this one, and I'll be sharing this link in our meeting chat. From here, you will see that there is the official documentation and all the things you can do with this. But from here, the important thing is about the differences in between the standard mode and transparent mode. So you will see here, which are like the specific differences of all of them, what you can do, what you cannot do in the other. But something you have to remember is that the standard mode is more restrictive. So if you want something more restrictive, depending on the team that is running queries and the federated search, and then you have to select the real standard mode so you can create more rules to run those queries.
Yeah, and standard mode has a lot of limitations
Yep.
when compared to transparent. And the biggest difference that I saw with customers is, any schedule searches, right? There is a lot of rework that has to be done if you're selecting a standard mode. So, most of the customers use transparent mode because they don't have to change any of the schedule searches or any of the knowledge objects that they have already created. So that's the big difference that I saw.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. But yeah, let me share this link in the chat so you can get access. You can take a quick look on that. Yeah. There is the meeting link. So if you want to take a quick view on that. But as you can see, the configuration for the federated search is not something complicated. It's something that can be easy. If you have, as I said before, if you have any problems implementing this feature, my recommendation would be to reach support if it is a Splunk Cloud and you are completely sure that there are not issues in your environment. So just remember that you just need the port 8089, which is the port that this protocol is going to use to communicate to the other searches, to the targeted searches. So that's the reason why we need that port also whitelisted, the 8089, which is going to be, I'm sorry, federated search, which is going to be the port, a specific port. So this one, 8089, this is the specific port. Depending on your environment, it can be changed, but this is something custom. By default, this is the port that Splunk uses for internal for communication. And remember always to test the connection. If this connection is successful, the query is going to work. If it fails, the query is not going to work. Okay, that's basically with this demo. As you could see, this is a simple configurations. So now the last stage of this meeting is questions. Do you have any specific questions about this?
Yes, greatly. So, uh, I'm just trying to understand, like, why can't we, like, federated searchit is just another searchit cluster trying to do a job, to another searchit cluster, right? Why can't we just add the indexer master to this searchit cluster and just use it as a normal searchit cluster? Like, I'm just trying to understand where the federated searchit fits in the whole, the stack itself.
Yeah, that's a good question. In fact, that's going to depend basically on what you want to achieve. So there are some limitations on this. This is like you can run queries, but you won't have the full search experience of a Splunk. So there are limitations even on the transparent mode. So this, for example, most of the cases that I have seen, this is a communication from a Splunk cloud to on-prem environment.
Okay.
So it is not possible, for example, to connect the cluster you have in on-prem to the one you have in cloud. So let me mention an example. I'm working right now with a customer that is implementing this federated search.
Okay.
And the reason why that customer was implementing the federated search is because they recently finished a migration from on-prem environment to cloud, and they didn't copy most of the data they have in on-prem to cloud. So the customer was saying, hey, I need something to access some of the indexes I have in on-prem, because some users uses that data, but
Yep.
I don't want to move this data to Splunk Cloud. So this method is perfectly fine for that customer, because they can access the index they have in on-prem, they can search there the information, and that can be retrieved from the Splunk Cloud machine. In this case, the configuration they're using, they're configuring the federated search basically here in the Splunk Cloud, and they are connecting to a cluster environment they have in on-prem.
On-prem. Okay. That explains it greatly. Thank you so much.
Hey Ram, just to add a couple more examples, right? So,
Yep.
most of the times the customers would like to, if they like, in Splunk Cloud migrations, if customers are migrating from on-prem to Splunk Cloud, right?
Yep.
Not everyone likes to migrate their historical data, because it's expensive.
Okay.
Two, and maybe some customers might not need the entire data. So in those cases, we are implementing the federated search, so that the customers can still search their historic data, and once the data ages out, they don't need it, right? Second, there are certain apps. So for example, Jenkins app, if customer needs Jenkins app in the Splunk Cloud, it's still not available. So in those cases, right, what I did was install the Jenkins app and on heavy forwarder on-prem, and they were able to search data from Splunk Cloud and still populate all the dashboards that they need on-prem. So that's another use case. And the third use case is data compliance rules, right? So for example, I had a customer where they had 3 different cloud stacks. One is in US, one is in Canada, and one is in Europe. Now, the data privacy or data loss in Europe is quite different when compared to the United States. So they have to still maintain the data that's generated from the Europe in the Europe region itself. So
Yep.
in those cases, what we did was, we implemented a federated search from the cloud stack that's in US to the cloud stack in CA and cloud stack in Europe. So people in US could still search data from Canada and from Europe as well. So there are different use cases, but it's mostly related to searching historical data or data that's in different regions.
That explains a lot, Pratyus. Thank you so much.
Anytime. Thank you.
Thank you, Pratish.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So when you're talking about the indexes, so you said in the transparent and standard, do you have to list every index then, or is there a way to like scan what's there and just kind of wild card some indexes? Like what if customer has a bunch of them being created?
Mhm. Yeah, wildcards, I think they are not supported for when you're specifying the index. Wildcards are not supported there. You have to specify a complete index name. If you want to add multiple index, you will need to add it then manually.
Yep, that's right. You have to create separate providers again. So
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I think we're done for today. Thank you so much, guys, for joining this session. Remember that if you have more questions about this specific feature, I would recommend you to check the documentation.